Hi there, welcome to the blog today. My name is Amy Hayes and I am actually going to share with you a video blog today instead of a written blog because the story I want to share with you is just dear to my heart. It's a story that has happened with me and our family over the last year and has just grown me in a whole different place than I was a year ago. And I also wanted to just do it more in person than in writing. And so it also has to do with Christmas, which is why I've waited till now to share this story. In the sense of it's a story about waiting. And just to talk about Christmas for a few minutes, I believe that Christmas is a great time of waiting. There's so much anticipation and excitement building up to this holiday of giving and family and love and maybe some travel and great memories being shared. But for many, many generations of people, the birth of Jesus was a time of difficult waiting, of not actually seeing the fruition of their waiting, of their hopes that their Messiah would come. And in fact, it was 4,000 years about from the time that Adam and Eve first arrived until the birth of Jesus. And so waiting isn't always easy, and we don't always see the answer to what we're waiting for or the hope of what we're waiting for. Waiting for maybe reconciliation in a relationship. We're waiting for a new job. We're waiting for our finances to turn around. We're waiting for a wayward child to return to us. We're waiting for sickness to be healed. There's many, many different things, and you can think about what that may mean for your life. But I don't know about you, but waiting for me is so hard because it's just kind of painful in that waiting space. And we just cannot see. It's like we have these blinders on. We cannot see or predict how and when our circumstances are going to change. And for me personally, I don't think there's anything that tests my faith more than waiting, which leads me to the story I want to share with you. Last year, not this past summer, but the summer before, my husband and I decided to put our house on the market. It was a house that we loved, that we had raised our children in for about 10 years. It was a beautiful home, and we had finished our basement and done some remodeling and just really made it into a place that we loved. Plus, we loved our neighborhood, our neighbors. There was just so much good. But some things had released in our life that had kept us at that house. And we just felt like it was time to make a change and make a change financially, to just downsize. We just didn't need that much space as our oldest daughter was going to college the next year. And we just wanted to simplify. We had just been convicted that, we don't really need to have as much as we do. And we could use some of that extra margin in our finances for other things that really would be a blessing to others. And so all of that happened last summer, and we processed through all of that. And we decided, all right, we're just going to do it. We're going to put our house on the market. And it wasn't like this exciting, like, yay thing. It was just kind of this disciplined feeling like, all right, we just need to do this or we're never going to do it because it's hard. And so we did. We put our house on the market, and it actually sold contracted over asking price within the first 48 hours, which was fantastic. And it just felt like God's blessing on our decision. And then at that same time, that same weekend, we found another house in a neighborhood that was like perfect. I was trying not to have high expectations knowing that we were downsizing. This was like the perfect place for us. It felt so great. When you just walk in a house and you're like, this is it. This is our home. And that's how I felt. We had looked at a few homes and gosh, this was it. I remember, we signed a contract with them and I jumped up and down on the front steps out there. My family thought I was crazy, but I just was like, this has been so easy. And God has totally blessed our decision. And gosh, I was just thrilled and thankful. And then a week and a half later, the buyers of our home pulled out, and right at the last minute. And we didn't know why. The reasons they gave us didn't really make sense, and we still don't know why. And something may be going on in their life, but it was really, really hard because we were not able to get our house back under contract before we had to back out of the house that we had fallen in love with in this other neighborhood. And it was like all of a sudden everything went from amazing to completely, like, everything fell apart. And I really, me personally, my family handled it a little bit better than I did, but I think being the mom and it's home and I'd already moved our kids into their rooms, and I just, home's a big deal for me, and it just is a place of family and connection, and, it's home. And I just loved this new place and loved that this whole plan was working out, and it just totally, totally tanked, all of it. And I remember wrestling with God during that time like I had never wrestled, because I didn't understand why he wasn't fixing it. There were people coming through our house still seeing it. I didn't understand why we weren't getting a contract like we did right away before. I knew that, I felt like, God, this is your plan. Why aren't you making it work? And yet it was just like silence, like a radio silence. And that went on for several weeks. And we ended up getting a different realtor, and we made some changes, and still nothing. And my anxiety and wrestling and frustration and questioning God. I mean, I have considered myself a faithful person for a long time, but I really realized, gosh, I'm faithful when things are going well, but when things are falling apart and not going the way that I think God wants them to go, or I think they should go in my life, my faith just really, really struggled. Not that I didn't believe in God anymore, but I just didn't know that I trusted that he saw me, and that he saw the pain I was in and the struggle I was in. And I just want to give a caveat here. I know there's so many circumstances that are worse than what we were in, more painful circumstances. But I think for me at that time, God used the circumstance because he knew that home was a big deal for me. That was my weak spot. And so it was pretty painful for me. And I really had to decide, am I going to be frustrated and upset and angry and doubting that God sees me during this time, or am I going to choose to have faith that he has a plan that's different from what I thought? And ultimately, I got to that place. It was not a quick process. It took several weeks, even a couple months of just this wrestling. And some days I was great with it and felt strong and, okay, God, I trust you. And other days I didn't. We ended up taking our house off the market before Thanksgiving with the intent of putting it back up on the market in the spring. And we're just like, all right, I guess this is where we're supposed to be, and we'll trust that some more houses come up in the spring for us. And around this time, we're actually a little bit closer to Christmas time, we received an offer on our house. And it was weird. Our house had been off the market, but somehow it was still online on some site, and somebody found it and they came out to see it. And they wanted it. And now it was like December, and we didn't want to move in the middle of December. There was nothing on the market anywhere where we were looking at living. And so we ended up negotiating with them that we'd sell them our house, and then we'd rent back till April. They weren't quite ready to move in anyway. And we thought for sure by April 15th, we would find a house, because the market the previous year was booming by early March. And so we settled into that waiting process and packed up our house and started looking for houses in March. And you know what? There was nothing on the market. Like maybe one a weekend would pop up in this range that we had. And we just thought, well, for sure next weekend, for sure next weekend. And weekend after weekend, all through March, I think we looked at like 3 houses. And we widened our scope, and, we weren't as picky about one neighborhood anymore. And still, there was nothing. I mean, the couple that we looked at just would not have been a fit for us. So I started to get stressed again about the whole thing of, well, God, that April 15th we're out of our house, and, we don't have a new house to go into. So we started making plans, and we have some wonderful friends that invited us to live with them for, a month to 6 weeks, and in their basement, and all 5 of us and our 2 dogs. And we figured, well, for sure by then we would find a place. And so as we approached April 15th, we had plans to move in with them, and still nothing on the market. And we packed up our house, and I remember we moved out on a rainy, cold kind of April day. It was a really wet, cold spring for us last year. And it was kind of just dreary. It was just dreary. And so I just, remember just crying as we were leaving and saying goodbye to people, and having this weird feeling of, I have no idea where we're going to live. We haven't found a house yet. There's nothing on the market. I don't know how long we're going to be without a house. And I just, again, had to walk through that whole place of just surrender and trust, and just say, God, I can't see what's going on in the future, but I know that you do have a plan for us. I'm choosing to know that, even though every day, even hourly, there were some hours I'd be really hopeful, and then other hours I'd be really discouraged, because I just wanted a place for our family to settle back into. It had just been kind of a long year by this point. And so we moved out of our house and we moved into our friends. Now, about a week before we moved out of our house, I ran into a friend of mine at the dentist. And she lived in the neighborhood that we had just moved out of. And she told me, you know what, we're actually getting ready to sell our house. We need to move, and we need to move pretty quickly for some circumstances in their life. And she said, I don't know if you're at all interested in staying in the neighborhood, but if you are, let's talk about it. And I honestly kind of brushed it off at that time, because I was like, oh my gosh, we're trying to downsize, and staying in the neighborhood doesn't make sense financially and all of that. And we had really emotionally left our neighborhood because we loved it so much. I think our whole family had to just kind of disengage. And so we still continued to look in other areas, and still nothing, week after week, even all through April, which is like high time for real estate in Colorado. It was and the whole market was just stuck, and everybody was talking about it. And so we ended up going back to my friend like a few weeks later and saying, all right, maybe we do need to look at staying here. And, why don't we have your realtor talk to mine? And pretty soon, like right away, they were talking actually. And my friend really wanted us to move into their house without having to put it on the market. And we decided, oh my gosh, this actually would be a perfect place for us to stay. And the price ended up being in our price range. And all of a sudden, we were like, oh my gosh, this maybe is our answer, not just to our prayers and hopes, but to our friends and their living situation. And we began to see that maybe God, he did have a plan all along. For whatever reason, he wanted us to stay in the neighborhood that we were in. And we literally, you guys, we moved in about a month later, and we moved 4 houses from our other house. And it's in a different series of home, and it's a smaller home, and it's a smaller yard, and but it's all the things that we just had asked for and hoped for, and even more. You guys, there's so many things about this house that we love more than the house that we moved out of. And I could have never imagined that. I just couldn't have. And I couldn't have imagined that God's plan for us was to move out of our house and into our friend's basement and into another house that was part of our story, in just this waiting time. And all along, his plan was for us just to move 4 houses away. And we've been here now since June, and we love it. We love it so much, and we see God's hand in all of it. And I just share this story to you, you guys, because I learned a huge lesson for myself. I learned that my faith wasn't as strong as I thought it was. When hard times hit, I really questioned if God had a good plan for me and for our family, and if he even saw it, and he saw us, and he saw what we were wrestling with. And he did. Of course he did. And I know that now, and I am hoping that as I go forward, when more difficult times hit, that I won't go to that place of just doubt so quickly, that I will just trust, even in the midst of the pain and the blindness to the future and the timing of everything, that I will just rest in knowing that God is good, and he does see us, and he does have a good plan for us. And we've actually had a couple of just challenging things happen in the last couple months. And I found myself going to that place of doubt and fear. And yet, because of what I went through last year, I was able to pull back pretty quickly and say, wait a second. I know who God is. I know his character. And even if we were living in a rental right now and still trusting for that provision, which could have been of a new house, very well been the case. I think that I chose last year to rely on my faith versus my fear. And that I'm in that place now of just being able to choose that. I'm choosing that God does see our circumstances and see our future, and that he is good. And so that's the hope and the message I wanted to give to you. Just as Jesus came for the people that had been waiting for so many generations, and he answered their prayers, and he gave them a hope, and he became their savior. That's what the message is for us this Christmas. God does see us. He does want to walk with us. He loves us so much that he sent his son in human form. And that is the God that we have. He does care about us. He does intimately want to be involved in our life. He knows what we're going through, you guys. And he does have a good plan. And he just asks us to trust him and to pray to him and ask him for wisdom and peace during our time of waiting. So I wish you a blessed Christmas this year. And I look forward to connecting with you going forward on the blog. Bye-bye.